Rose Namajunas won that fight. Rose Namajunas won the fight. I waited my time. By the way, you want to know why I'm bringing this to you 5 or 6 days after this happened? Because I didn't want to be met with the resistance. And I didn't really want to push back. And I also didn't want to make an excuse for one person in the sport who has never in her history in the sport made an excuse. Let me reword it. And I did say that. I said that for shock value, right? I just splashed some cold water in your face. Rose didn't win the fight. The judges had it right. But hold on, because there's other things that you're fighting for aside from having your hand raised, right? You've heard of something called a moral victory. But moral victories aren't always the case unless there's lopsided odds. For example, if there's lopsided experience, for example. Or if you're coming off a delay, you're coming off an injury, you're making a return, or you're changing weight classes. So you have to understand what Rose was going into. Because behind the glitz and the glamour and the Thug Rose and all of the stuff that you know about her and the world champion, it's going to be in the Hall of Fame, like all of these beautiful things, there's a human being, and there's possibly nobody more in our sport that is a human being more than Rose. She will tell you how she's feeling. She will tell you what bothers her. And when she does tell you how she's feeling, what bothers her, it's the same stuff that you feel, it's the same stuff that bothers you, right? Like that's the connection with Rose. So take a look at this from her perspective. She's done everything that you can do at 115 pounds, and she did it without having hard feelings. I think hard feelings would be very understandable, okay? Rose beats Joanna Champion, which is a surprise. So she has to do a rematch. And I have to word it that way. Has to do a rematch. I have to word it that way. I mean, what just happened to Aljo is what happened to Joanna Champion. Aljo doesn't get a rematch, and Rose's new champion has to go back in and defend. And by the way, Joanna Champion happened to be the biggest women's star in the sport. And she was chasing Ronda down, by the way. I mean, Joanna was red hot. Rose beats her again. Well, as fate would have it, Rose finds herself in the exact same spot. She shuts off Wei Li. But she shuts off Wei Li without ever being touched. Wei Li never kicked her. Wei Li never punched her. Wei Li never pushed her. Wei Li never made contact, and that fight was over. So there is nothing to draw from that fight that would lend you towards a rematch. There's nothing. I mean, again, I'll go back to the Aljo example because there was one completed round and Aljo won the round. So now you know he can do it. It's not a matter of that. It's a matter of if he hadn't taken that one shot, would have he done it? He already did it once. He's just got to rinse and repeat that 2 more times. He can screw up 2 more times along the way. And he still wins, but he doesn't get the rematch. So Rose goes off. She shuts off Wei Li. She has to rematch her. I've got to word it like that. Now, she gets to do that at the Mecca of Madison Square Garden. And it's a match that it felt as though they were trying to slip it in like to correct the books because they didn't make it a main event. Just by example, she has to go out and do this. It turns into a totally different fight. All of a sudden, Rose does not catch her. There is no I caught her. They grind it out for 25 minutes, of which going into the 5th round, Rose was behind. She came from behind, showing that heart and that determination, and she beat her again, just like she did Joanna Champion. But I didn't hear this big celebration. I didn't see the confetti shooting out, right, as the music's playing and the lights are bumping. We had it wrong. I didn't feel like there was any of that. Okay, but no hard feelings. Moves right along the way. Ends up having the match with Esparza, which is said to be the worst match ever. And you could word it that way. I wouldn't argue with you, but you must concede back. If I give you that point, you must concede back to me. It was the closest fight ever. We have no idea to this day who won that fight or why. Esparza did not know in that moment that she won or why they saw it that way. And the same would go with Rose. And I think a commission and explanation would be very difficult to give. Can we all agree on that? Okay. I don't have an overly large point. I'm just kind of trying to share the history of Rose and why she moves up to 125 pounds to get the belt back around Wei Li, which appeared to be where they wanted the belt. So if you're Rose and you start to see this, The girl at the belt I've beaten twice. They're giving me things to do, but going out and getting an opportunity to fight her a third time isn't one, even though I beat her twice. I got to leave the division. And she does it with no hard feelings. She just leaves the division. It turns out I'm going to go after Valentina Shevchenko. So she's got something to do in between. And this is just the story. This is just the way that this happened. But if you go back and you watch that fight, I think that you were very falsely informed during the fight and after the fight. And I would bookend that with announce team Ariel Helwani. I don't blame announce team, and I don't blame Ariel Helwani. I thought that I saw what they saw as well. I will just share with you that after going back and reflecting on it, and you guys can do this, it's exactly 3 minutes and 50 seconds into the very first round. Rose throws a right hand and cracks her. Rose breaks something. Something goes bad. It looks as though she's broken her hand. And you could even see Rose, like, as she, boom, she hits her, and as she's pulling back, you see Rose, and you know there's a problem. That's what the announce team saw. That's what the announce team spoke to. But you now have a wounded Rose who never threw that right hand again. Book in that after the fight with a picture that Ariel Helwani tweeted out of Rose's broken finger. Well, I'm staring at that finger. I mean, that sumbitch isn't broken. That's dislocated, which from a use and a pain standpoint is much more extreme. We've seen people that can fight with broken hands. Not going to get any worse. I might as well fight. A dislocation is something totally different. Now you can't control it. Now you can't close it. Now you can't grab with it. You can't do anything with it. And by the way, to fix it, all you have to do is grab it and straighten it out. Now, you may not know that, and I don't blame the cornerman for not doing it, but I was a little bit surprised that the cornerman didn't do it because Rose said to the cornerman, my finger is jacked. He could have at least looked down at it, and any cut man would know a dislocation from a break and would have also been confident to pull on it, I think. I'm not blaming. I'm trying to tell a story, and I waited my time. I waited my time to tell it. To not interfere and to not take away from the victor. But the victor came out after the fight and said Rose was too small for the division. I think her intent, that's a quote, but I think her intent was to defend Rose. I think it was. But I will tell you that's not how it sounded. To many people thought that she was brushing her off. She's too small for this division. Many people thought she was brushing her off. First off, Rose didn't look small to me. Second off, I saw her training tape. She looked big and she looked strong, and I know she pulled down to this weight class. Third off, she had one hand. After 3 minutes and 50 seconds of the very first round, Rose never used one of her hands again. By the way, it was her power hand. She never used it again, and she told her cut man twice about the hand. All they had to do was look down at it. He never even looked at it. All they would have had to do was pull on it. They never did that. They didn't try to assess it. They didn't address it in any way. Rose didn't say, will you look at my hand and will you fix my hand? If it's dislocated, could you straighten it? She didn't say that, but that's not the way a fighter would speak. They would say, I got a problem with my hand. You take it from there. My hand is killing me. I got a problem with it. That's it. You catch your breath. Another courtman's coach, who'd be Pat Barry in this case, is talking to you. Cutman looks down, addresses it. Or tells you it can't be addressed. Or tells the referee, get her out of here. She's going to be fighting with one hand all night. I don't know how to fix that. This fight is over. But that's not what happened. You saw the grit and you saw the heart of Rose. You did not see an undersized Rose. You saw a one-handed Rose. If you believe that she's undersized as the opponent, and now you're armed with the fact that she fought with one hand, shouldn't have you stopped her? Shouldn't have you done more to her than that? There's no retirement for Rose. There's no changing of weight classes for Rose. There's no 115 pounds for Rose. There's no this is the wrong line of work for Rose. There was a dislocation for Rose. And by the way, I'm not blaming the cornerman. I'm just telling you what I saw, and I waited my time to say it. You go back and you look at that fight, and you see that she fought with one hand, and she's still backing the girl up, and then you come to me and you tell me Rose doesn't belong and Rose can't do this work. You didn't watch the fight correctly. You might not have watched the fight at all. It sounds like you listened to the fight, and you heard it wrong.